Sammy, what do you think about clutch? Like
So
what
the
Marie
person that came to mind for me was Jana Hefford.
Oh yeah, okay.
And the thing with Jana was, it'd be interesting to do a points analysis of big games, but she scored the majority of her goals in big games, whereas some of our other superstars scored the majority of their points in, 11-0 routes. So she just always was able to come to play in the big moments and the big times, and very unassumingly so, almost like Marie-Philippe. Well, Marie-Philippe Poulin is a whole nother entity because she does it everywhere on the ice. But and another one is Hilary Knight on the American side. I mean, she scored in that final game, and she really did take her team on her shoulders. But the amount of overtime winners she scored, or game time goals she scored, big moment goals. I mean, she's a similar par to Marie-Philippe Poulin. Just this time came out on the other side of the coin. But I would equate the two with their impact on the game and impact on their teams.
I wonder if it's a personality thing. The ability is a factor, but more important is sort of the internal drive to get excited, more excited, but not tight. To not grip the stick tight, but to actually perform at the right time. And I'm just wondering about that quality, whether you can identify it earlier in kids and capitalize on it and bring it to the forefront. But I like your mention of Hefford. Mike, you might not know this, but Hefford was playing on our team in Salt Lake City in 2002. And she scored the third goal to make it 3-1. 1 second left in the second period. So those kind of players are special, and they do come through it at big times. And hopefully we'll see more and more of them. But Marie-Philippe Poulin has been doing that since 2010. I don't know how often she did it when she was playing minor hockey. But when you're coaching younger kids, I don't know that there's those kind of kids that I haven't watched enough minor hockey to realize, well, here's a clutch player. Here's a clutch player. It's very intriguing. It was a good question to ask, asking a clutch player why they do it or how they do it.
And what did she respond with?
It was sort of a general response.
She always deflects. She never really answers about herself. She always deflects to her teammates, which is an amazing quality. But it's hard when you want to get to know her, like what goes on in her brain. I'm sure she probably deflected too. It's just great to get to play alongside Brianne Jenner and Sarah Nurse. And
I think that's what you said is probably why. There's that degree of internal selfishness that it doesn't show, and you never let it out. It might be a degree of responsibility within you, ownership within you, with such a big degree of respect for your teammates, and being able to rise to the occasion. It's amazing. But you're right. She's not a self-centered person at all, and it's curious. Somebody should do a study on it. I'm sure somebody might down the road here. So
I'm sure there is. I mean, there's probably books written about it, especially in other sports, because this is not abnormal. Every sport has these people, and maybe from a sports psychology perspective, there must be something. Mike, check your bookshelf. There's got to be something.
But I want to say that the nature of the sport, ice hockey, lends to this, right? Because the debate down here is always, and not to generalize, but overall, when you look, you don't see it. You don't see the same thing in basketball. You don't see it in baseball here. And you don't see it in football. The ice hockey. Not that I don't want to say the athletes are more. I think they understand from an early age that an individual player can't just dictate the game by themselves without other effects. In basketball, you can. One player can dictate basically a game, and in a lot of ways, all the other people that are doing all the things they need to do in baseball and football, but you don't need the way hockey is structured. I think lends itself to players understanding that they need a full unit of people helping them achieve their goal, and it's just the nature of the sport. Like I'm one that when I work with the little kids, like I'm not somebody that says, oh, you got to pass the puck every time. Like we have kids that score, in these little games, and they're scoring all the time. I mean, at will. And I never try to be like, okay, you can't score anymore. I try to get them to think about other ways to get to the net and challenge their skill. I think they're just some players that love to score. They love to go to the net if they can do it. Listen, if we have players that can just take the puck at the face-off and go score, are we ever going to tell them that they have to pass the puck? Because they go score. But what's the negative effect? So I think players learn because of the way the sport's structured that they need to work with their teammates to get to a certain place. But I think Wally, you're right on last night in that interview. And that's a quality. I think maybe privately you could get that out of a player, but publicly she wouldn't even mention herself. So of course it's not me. It's all these great players around me that are doing these great things. So that allowed me to have the puck in a place where I could, showcase my skills. But I think that's more. I don't know. Because I'm around a lot of other athletes in other sports, and I think it's more the creation of what hockey creates as opposed to what other sports encourage.
The evolution of her role as a leader, I think, has evolved with the organization and the coaching staff and Gina's role as the manager. There's definitely a team first mindset, and Poulin's a perfect captain for that, not an outcome mindset.
I think Wally, the team has evolved to reflect her leadership rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
I think that she has always been that person, and she right from the get-go joining the organization. But I think with other leaders perhaps around her, or maybe more voices heard, that mentality was not always reflected. And I think what these last 4 years have allowed is that slowly but surely others are buying into what she has brought. And I think that includes Gina and the coaching staff. That she would never say this, but I mean, I think that whole program reflects who she is.
Good point.
And I think that Hockey Canada was only allowed to do that because this is a generational superstar who's been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like if she was just there for 2 years, you don't necessarily see changes like that. But this has been a slow, gradual build, I think. And yeah, anyways, my 2 cents. Mike, I was just curious if you, the coverage for the women's game and the final game, I was pleasantly surprised to hear Canada speak about their experience in this way, that the joy in the game, the buy-in to the roles, and the ability to be creative was not really what I had seen from Canada all year. And the way that I had researched Joel Johnson is that that's the way he coached, and that he was almost like a Ted Lasso type coach that the players really loved. And then in the final game, I felt like there was a reversal of roles where he like cut down to 2 lines. And it just seemed like both coaches did the opposite of what I thought they were going to do in that experience. So I was just curious what you thought on that, and if I even read that right from a color commentating perspective.
Yeah, I was shocked that when you get like you play that role all the way through, and you build that foundation, and then you fall back to nature like your human nature saying, I just got to put my 6 best players on the ice for as long and thinking I'm going to get back to a place where we can play deep again. Right. And it was a weird, it's just, it's because I think that's the pressure, and that's the trust, and that's the ability to say, because imagine those players on the bench that were trusted all the way through, right to the last minute. And now you're not trusted anymore. And whether that's, I don't know, maybe if they would have got a goal or two and turned it around, and we're talking how great strategy it was to shorten the bench and play your best players. But I think overall, and this is where I think our world is. I mean, this is not just hockey, but that the ability to trust the process and not to worry about the first 5 minutes, not to worry about the first period, not to worry about the second period. And if you fail, you failed by sticking to the process you laid out to begin with. And I think that's where I think the U.S. went wrong in the women's game. And I actually listened to Poulin last night speak. I think she was on an interview. I must have been watching, I don't know what program I was watching, but you could hear that the Canadians, the joy in playing was evident. I mean, it's just no doubt about it in the way they speak about their teammates and practicing and preparation, that there was so much joy. And I think people that don't understand that piece of it, especially where I'm in an area where it's like, steel sharpens steel. The best have to play the best. The worst kids can get culled out. I mean, I'm in a world right now where, you have a brick tryouts for 2015s next weekend, 2015 year burst, brick tryouts. So I'm like, well, what's the tryout? Can they carry their bag into the rink? Do they make the team? I don't know. So, but there's the pressure is so great that it's hard where I am for people to kind of see that. And so I thought that was a really interesting, pickup by everybody, is say, well, why you got all the way here and then you just said, then you just showed by your actions you didn't trust your team. And I think it probably showed. I mean, if you really had the opportunity to zoom in on those faces during shifts, you'd probably see it on the faces of those women for sure.